So, first of all, I would like to introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the founder of the Unicorn CTO, which is a private membership for CTOs and engineering leaders looking to learn and grow with like-minded peers through weekly live learning sessions, online resources, events, and a community of 100 plus engineering leaders to expand your network and get peer mentoring. Let's talk about politics. So, I'm sure that's something that you are not expecting when it comes to VP engineering and CTOs. So, I actually very usually get the question about, yeah, what's the difference between a CTO and a VP engineering, and what should be the right behavior for a CTO and the right behavior for a VP engineering? And uh, I came up with my own answer, which is very much like the relationship between the prime minister and the president in France. So, for those of you who are not familiar with the French system, let me give you a bit more details about how it works. So, in the French system, the president, who's by the way is elected directly by the citizens, formulates directions on defense and foreign policy. They name the prime minister and government ministers. They arbitrate the efficient service of the government, and they receive foreign ambassadors. So basically, they interact with all the other countries. So that's the president. While the prime minister, who acts in harmony with the president, they direct the actions of the government. They actually manage the ministers. They oversee much of the nation's day-to-day domestic affairs, and then they make budget decisions and challenge the programs that are formulated by the ministers for every ministry. So, what is interesting is if you actually make a comparison between president, prime minister, and CTO, VP engineering, well, in that case, the CTO formulates tech vision and strategy. They name the VP engineering and they help recruit the engineering leaders, the same way that the president name the ministers based on recommendations from the prime minister. They follow engineering performance and monitor KPIs, so that's the day-to-day business of the nation, and they represent the engineering team outside the company to clients and investors and during industry events. If you look more closely about the job of a CTO, and by the way, by CTO, I mainly mean the CTO of a company that has above 50 engineers, and I'll get to that in a few. So the CTO of that kind of company would spend most of their time formulating vision and strategies, coaching the VP engineering, all the engineering leaders, talking to customers and at events, and monitoring the performance of the engineering team. The VP of engineering, the prime minister, would then act in harmony with the CTO, direct the actions of the engineering leaders, so the various directors and managers. They oversee much of the team's build and sometimes the run as well. And they make budget decisions and challenge strategies formulated by the different managers and directors. So you see, it's quite interesting to see the contrast between president, prime minister, and CTO, VP of engineering. And if you look at how they would spend their time, so they would spend their time doing organizational design and managing the managers, doing board meetings and presentations to clients if need be, making decisions, build versus buy or vendor management. And obviously, they would still need to be quite technical to understand the problems and making sure that the team has access to the right talent internally or externally to solve the problems. So, by the way, that's a little slide that you're seeing here is what I call the CTO growth cycle. So when you're the startup CTO and you grow as fast as the company, so you go through different stages: the maker, the expert, the manager, and the executive. And basically, a lot of the questions I get about VP engineering is, when should we start hiring a VP of engineering? So I'm gonna get back to the different flavors that you see in the ecosystem in a few, but the best practice I've seen is to have a CTO who actually endorses the role of the VP of engineering. So basically, that's the manager that you see here. So 15 to 50 engineers. So they would actually themselves manage the managers, uh, be very much involved in organizational design, career planning, recruiting. And then once they have stabilized the organization, they would then hire a VP of engineering to do that for them so they can be more strategic. So usually the moment where you should be as a CTO hiring a VP of engineering is when the CTO has done the VP of engineering job and he's replacing themselves and are replacing themselves with a VPE. So I like very much this model of replacing yourself because it has two advantages. The first one is that it makes the CTO go through all the various roles in their organization. So it actually is better to do that to understand the problems that your future team members will go through and to challenge them accordingly. And also to have more empathy towards them because you know the shit that they're going through. So it makes it easier for you to understand and be more empathetic towards them. So that's the first advantage, is that because you've been there, so you can help them better. And you also know um, how to recruit the best person because you've been there. The second advantage of having a CTO who endorsed the role of VP engineering and then recruited someone is that it forces the CTO to always be in a mentality of replacing themselves. So the accurate word is actually firing yourself every 6 months to 12 months by either enabling someone in the organization to take the role or to hire someone from outside. So this way, you actually make sure that every team that you leave is autonomous enough to be independent of you. So that's why I actually usually recommend for CTOs to actually be the VP of engineering before recruiting the VP of engineering. By the way, guys, uh, I think you all realize that there's a chat here. So you are completely allowed to ask questions during the discussion so that I can use that actually to enrich the discussion and also provide you some answers. So for example, Karim's question is a great question. So isn't it challenging as a CTO to hire someone better than you as a VM engineer to replace yourself? So it does require some soul searching and to be comfortable with yourself, to understand that your job as a leader is to always find people that are better than you to do the job. So by the way, the best way for you to progress in your life and in your career is to always is to never be the smartest person in the room. As you know, if you are the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So here, basically, as a leader, it's very important for you to identify people that are better than you. But because you've done their job, then it makes you appreciate even more why you're hiring someone. So but to go deeper on that, what I've heard many times is I hate management. And because I hate management, so I'm going to hire a VP of engineering to do that for me. Uh, that's actually one of the worst ways of recruiting a VP of engineering, because basically you're hiring someone to do something that you don't like. So anyone could do. Oh, he seems that like a nice guy, and yeah, and she likes to interact with human beings, so she's going to do a great VP of engineering. No, so you have to actually really do the job and understand what is required to do the job in your organization, to then find someone who can do it better than you with their own style, so you can move to something else. But by the way, Karim, to answer your question in a deeper way, when the CTO is a shareholder of the company, like a founding CTO, it's in their financial interest to do that, because as a shareholder, what they want is to have the best possible people in the company to take it to the next level. Because if the company goes to the next level, then the company will be more valued and they will make more money. So that's also one of the um, financial advantages of replacing yourself with someone who's better than you. But yes, what I've seen is a lot of CTOs or VP of engineering, by the way, who get stuck at some point because they only hire people that are not better than them, but people that learn from them. So to talk more specifically, I really like this example. So that's a blog post from David Sachs, who's an investor, that he called the SaaS org chart. So if you type on Google SaaS org chart David Sachs, you'll get the post. So he actually wrote what is some kind of target organization for SaaS companies, but even if you're not a SaaS company, that would be interesting to look at. And usually the VP of engineering arrives at the company according to that best practice target organization when there are around 40 engineers in the organization. So until 40 engineers, usually it is expected of the CTO to do that. And then when you go beyond around 30 engineers, then it makes sense to hire a VP of engineering to manage web development and client applications and core services and QA. Also, one point is that what I've seen is that many VP of engineering are not in charge of infrastructure, and there is no problem with that. So for a lot of companies, infrastructure is a different job. So there is a VP of infrastructure, and they're in charge of that. But also in the DevOps philosophy right now, maybe it makes less and less sense to have an infra team on one hand and a dev team on the other hand. And it would make more sense to have everyone working together. And then when the company keeps growing, still according to the David Sachs target org chart, so now the VP of engineering still has up to 90 people in their team with several directors, the directors managing the managers who are managing either leads or developers. So basically, that gives you an idea of how typical SaaS organization grow. So you have a CTO. Oh, let me go back actually too. So you have a CTO who's like the founding CTO and the first developer. Then they start making some money, or they raise the first round of funding. By the way, who knows what's going to happen now with funding? And start hiring some developers. So they do a first transition from maker to the expert. So now they're the most expert in the team. So their job is to transfer their knowledge to the first developers so that they can be autonomous from them, and start creating some very light processes and rituals so that everyone can uh, pick up work, prioritize work, and make decisions. Then the next level is start when you start having between 15 and 50 engineers in the team, is to first hire some managers. And then once you've managed some managers and understand what it is like, then it's time to bring in a VP of engineering who's going to do that so that the CTO can move to other things. Those other things that we've seen before, being vision, strategies, helping with recruitment, representing the company outside and to investors and clients, and basically being the warrant of the engineering team's performance. And then it's up to the VP of engineering to grow the team to with hiring directors that will manage the managers and so on. Usually, in big tech companies, a VP does not manage more than 100 people in their organization. Do you guys have any questions so far? Cool. So, um, if you don't have questions, I have 2 points I'm still left to address. The first one is where to find your VP of engineering. So, um, a, a lot of the Unicorn CTO members ask me about when they start looking for a VP of engineering, they ask me about where can I find my VP of engineering. So here are a few tips. So obviously there is the obvious answer, which is look for someone who's a VP of engineering and hire them, or ask your local headhunting agency to do that for you. And what they will do is they go on LinkedIn and type VP of engineering, and they start contacting candidates. Now, that's the least efficient way of hiring a VP of engineering, um, in the sense of culture adjustment. Because if you hire someone who's already done it before, it will be much more difficult for them to adapt to your culture and your way of doing things. And they would likely bring with them some of their team. So it's great if you want to scale fast. And again, I don't know what's going to happen in the market now with recession, but for companies that had to add 100 people in 1 year or more, it's definitely easier to hire a VP of engineering with, I don't know, a couple of managers and all the developers that work for them to fill that gap. But the downside is that, well, you get a soulless company with people working the way they used to work, and it's not them who are adapting to your culture and your way of working, but it's the contrary. So my recommendation is actually to VP of engineering is the kind of um, position where you can take some bets on people, like hiring someone who used to be an engineering manager and who will actually be able to grow the company or the organization from 10 people, 10, 15 people to 50. And I've seen that many times. So it's a struggle for the newly appointed VP of engineering because they've never done it before. But it's actually one of the best career track that I've seen. So someone who was an engineer, then became a lead, and then a manager, and then was hired by another company to be head of engineering or VP of engineering. So my recommendation would be to really look for someone who's been an engineering manager in the past, who already has the experience in managing around 10, 15 engineers, and who can actually do that at your company and scale the team up to 50 engineers and more. And those, by the way, are easier to find because technically speaking, there are more managers than VPs. The last point I wanted to address is how to do the interview. So let's say that now you are convinced that you need to hire a VP of engineering. It's the right moment, and you've identified a candidate. So what kind of questions you should be asking? And thank you, Celine, for the great question about the tech skills of a VP of engineering. So you definitely should assess the tech skills of a VP of engineering. What you don't want is a VP of engineering who's the best engineer in the team. So what you don't want is someone who's like a very technical person and that will ask not to do that. The kind of VP of engineering that you want is the one who can trigger respect, so who can be respected by team members. Why? Because you've all been in this case. So you have to interact with a manager or the manager of your manager who doesn't have a clue about what you're doing. And there is nothing worse as an engineer to have to do a presentation or talk about a problem to someone who doesn't have a clue about what you're talking about. So the question is not how technical should a VP of engineering be, but rather, are you hiring a VP of engineering who is able to go deep if need be? So there is actually, I'm going to find the link right now. So at Apple, they actually ask VPs to be very technical. And the problem with that is that at some point, a VP of engineering cannot be very technical on all their topics. So they came up with a model. So hold on, let me try to stop that, and I'm going to share now this screen. All right. So that's a Harvard Business Review article, which is called How Apple is Organized for Innovation. And so basically what you're seeing here is a model called discretionary leadership. So at Apple, every single VP is supposed to be very expert to have a high expertise in topics that they own. So basically, owning topics are topics that where they have to make decisions, and they should be highly involved in the details. Now, when a VP starts managing a team where they don't have a high expertise, but still need to be highly involved in the details because it's a very important product, or they have to make very important decisions, then they have to dedicate some time in their agenda to learn about that new topic. And to go deeper on Salim's question, what you should look for, one of the great skill you should be looking for in a VP of engineering is their ability to have high expertise on a domain very quickly. So you want people that are very fast learners and who can go deep technically, even if they didn't have that skill before. And I'll tell you in a few how you can do that during the interview. And then just to finish the Apple discretionary leadership model. So when they have high expertise on a topic, but they don't need to be highly involved in the details, then they have to teach that to the managers in their team who have to be involved in the details. And for the topics where they have low expertise and they shouldn't be involved in the details, then they delegate completely decision making and follow up. So I think that's a very interesting model because the VP should possess a high expertise in the most important topics in their team. And if they don't, then they have to learn them. So going back to answering the question, because Karim also asked the other way around, which is what kind of profile you should avoid at the first VP of engineering. So you should definitely avoid someone who's not technical. For sure, you should avoid that. So the only trick is don't measure the technicality of a VP engineering, measure their ability to learn fast. Other things that you should avoid in terms of a VP of engineering profile are someone who comes from like a very big organization. So because again, a VP of engineering in a 200 people startup is not the same thing as a VP of engineering in a 10,000 people or 1,000 people organization. So, and sometimes it's complicated for some people to readjust to a smaller team. So it's easier for someone who to go from 15 direct team members to 50 than to go from 200 to 50. So try to really dimension the hierarchy to the size of the company, because some people have trouble adjusting to a smaller team size. And then going back to the interview. So basically, one, you need to hire a VP of engineering who can be able to go deep and to have a high expertise on your topics, on your main topics. It doesn't matter if they fail some of the technical tests, as soon as you have managed to measure the fact that they can learn very fast. Two, you need to hire a VP of engineering that can be respected by team members. So have them interview the VP of engineering. So I don't know if you've ever been in that situation, but I have, and I see that many companies do that. They have people interview their future boss. And it makes sense because you don't want to have to bombard someone, VP of engineering, and say, okay, Lars, this is your new boss. So starting now, you will have to report to them. By the way, he sucks at tech, and he comes from, I don't know, a consulting company. So good luck. Instead, what you want is people to say, I would love to work for that guy. So have engineers interview the VP of engineering so that they can actually see themselves working for the guy. And then the two last parts of the interviews are the ability of the VP of engineering to formulate plans and execute them. So to formulate plans is the ability to say, to give objectives to a VP of engineering, say, okay, this is what I want you to achieve. Like, dear VP of engineering, I would like to be able to have that kind of velocity in the team. How would you do it? So you need to have a VP of engineering who is able to think out loud and say, okay, so for example, if you want to achieve that kind of velocity, or being able to ship that kind of feature. So first of all, let me ask you a few questions. So how many times do you push to prod per day? How many product managers do you have? What's the process between product requirements and coding and then testing and then pushing to production? So once the VP of engineering was able to understand all that, then they can start formulating a plan. Say, okay, based on the information I have, these are the things that I would be working on. So you see how the VP of engineering thinks, knowing that the VP of engineering is an operations person. So they think in terms of supply chain and how to build the best possible teams and the best possible processes to achieve the desired results. So use cases. And then to make sure that they can execute on this plan, then you have to ask them situational questions. So when is the last time that you disagreed with a team member? How did you deal with that? How can you explain a major incident to the CEO of the company? How can you do that with a client? Have you had the situation before? How did you deal with it? So situational questions allow you to see how the future VP of engineering would behave uh, when facing certain situations that they will face eventually. So CTO VP engineering is the one that you encounter in big companies, or are there other forms of role distribution possible? So Jeremy has an interesting question. So that now is the time where I talk about the various flavors that exist in the market. So when it comes to public companies and unicorns approaching the IPO and becoming public companies, that's the only, mostly main model that I've seen is a strategic CTO who spends their time thinking about the future, talking to business stakeholders and investors, and being the face of the company to the outside world. And a VP of engineering who's in charge of operations, so they recruit and manage the team, and they're in charge of the delivery. That's 99% of the cases that I've seen in the market. Between the small startup and the unicorn prepping to IPO or the public company, I've seen some different flavors. So basically, there are three main flavors that I've seen. The first one is the uh, research CTO. So usually you have a very technical CTO, and when they hire the VP of engineering, they go back to like deep research. And when they do that, so they start leading a research team with a small team of very technical people or even scientists, and they work on tomorrow. By the way, that fits sorry into the picture I just gave you, which is a CTO spending their time thinking about the future, talking to business stakeholders, and representing the company outside. It's just that they are doing it not as the boss of the VP of engineering, but as someone in charge of another team. So I've seen that scenario in some companies. Um, the trick is that sometimes you have like a team within a team. So the CTO and their guys doing stuff on their side, and then and they're doing all the fun stuff, and then all the boring stuff goes to the VP of engineering and the delivery team. So that's a bit tricky, and you have this kind of the CTO boys versus the rest of the company. Another flavor I've seen is the contrary. So basically, the founding CTO becoming a VP because they love management and because they don't really like to interact with investors and they like maybe the business side of things, then they would hire someone to be their boss as a CTO and work from them. So they would be managing their own team or the whole delivery team and having someone else as a CTO. So that's another thing that I've seen in the market is the founding CTO becoming VP of engineering. And then the third flavor is the one that I mentioned, which is the CTO being the boss of the VP of engineering. And my strong opinion on the topic is that when you look at evolution of unicorn tech companies, so a lot of them actually still have the same founding CEO. Why? Not because the job is different, but you have a lot of support systems in place to enable CEOs to change because it's a very different job to be the CEO of a 5-person company and to be the CEO of a 500-person company. And that's why you have coaches, training programs, mentoring programs, communities for CEOs to change. Now, when you look at founding CTOs, very few of them actually stay CTOs when the company reaches unicorn status or even goes public. Very few of them. Why? Because They would say that, yeah, they wanted to go back to the tech side and they wanted to build stuff and whatever, but mainly because when you look at CTOs, there is a lack of support system in place. But if CTOs are interested to grow with their company, it's very beneficial for the company because they are usually the soul of the tech team. So they created the initial culture. They implemented a lot of processes and designs in the tech team, and also they've been there. So when you have a founding CTO that actually grows with the company, it makes more empathetic and more developer friendly environments rather than having a CTO coming from outside who's great, by the way, with investors, but he's but creating an environment where developers are not really happy. So it's part of my fight, by the way. So that's why actually I spend that my job is actually working with CTOs and engineering leaders to help them grow, so that especially when they're the founding CTO, to be able to keep the tech soul with them, because the market clearly lacks of C-levels with a tech DNA. Guys, we're almost at the end of this session. So I would like to thank you very much for your attendance. And I actually have the time for one more question. So if you have one more question, I can answer it right now. Any more question? One, two, three. All right. So thank you very much for attending this session. Oh yeah. All right. So very good question about Salim. Compensation and equity. So very quickly, average salary of a VP of engineering in a growing startup is between 90K euro per year to 150. That's more or less the range. And then public companies is more than that. And by the way, Silicon Valley is way more than that. But in Europe, what I've seen is that 90K, 150K per year. Now, equity, a VP of engineering is top leadership. So they should get the same amount of equity than the VP of marketing and the VP of sales and all the VPs that will be hired by the company. So few percent. So what I've seen is like, so either you have BSPC for the French ones, stock options, or you have another way of actually sharing stock options to team members. Usually you don't give away direct equity. So the equivalent would be, so what I've seen is that when the company gets acquired, it's cool for people to get between a year and a half and 3 years of salary after the acquisition. So I've seen more. So actually, I was talking to a VP of engineering yesterday, and when their company was acquired, they made I think was a bit more than $4 million. So that's great. But the what you should aim for is something that is around 1 or 2% of the total equity or less, depending on how much equity is being given out. All right, guys. Thank you very much for all your questions and your time. As usual, the webinar was weird because I did not see your faces, but it was very smooth. So thanks to the contrast team. The experience was much better than the other tool that I used the last time. So I'll definitely use you guys again. And I wish you all a very good day. Cheers. Bye bye.